Welcome back to Built to Ship, a podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Nikola, CEO and co founder of Deep Infra, a company that's building an API first, low latency inference cloud for open source LLMs and other deep learning models. They've already scaled from millions to hundreds of billions of tokens a day while keeping cost and reliability top of mind. Nikola, awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, yeah, I want to start at the founding story and maybe even before that. What were you doing before Deep Infra, and what brought you to the idea of starting your own company?
Yeah, so I love working at startups. I spent the previous 12 years before starting Deep Infra working at a couple different startups, and I like to join pretty early on. And that's kind of how I met the team and the co-founders with which I started Deep Infra. So before Deep Infra, I worked on instant messaging startup called IMO for over 10 years. That was very exciting. That's kind of where I met a lot of the team and my co-founders, which I'm working on with right now. So how did we get started? I think, I spent 10 years working on the backend and infrastructure of this messaging app, and we were pretty fortunate to get over 200 million monthly active users using our app and over a billion downloads in the Google Play Store. So working on that was very exciting. I learned a lot of interesting stuff. And so once this kind of project kind of wind down, I really wanted to do something again with the same people. Um, you have to pick some new area. Like, if that makes sense, like, I think it's the best ways to build a new company is to pick a new area that is upcoming and not stuff hasn't been built for it yet. And so you have to look a little bit in the future and see what is coming. And I had few other ideas I was thinking about, so that's always a very hard moment where you have to pick the one thing to go after.
Totally.
So I have to give some credits to kind of our great advisors. George Herrick was one of the first 10 people with Google. He's very excited about AI and there's a lot of research in the area. So he kind of guided us towards trying to build something in the AI, but something that also was, you know, part of our strengths, right? Like, I spent 10 years building this large backend services for hundreds of millions of users and running our own infrastructure, the messenger. So I kind of tried to take the lessons from that and apply them to a new area. Um, and it's not like a straight line. Like when we first started, we wanted to host the top open source models, but at that time, the top AI models, at least based on Hugging Face, were things like BERT that quickly don't have much applications anymore. So you have to be very agile. Like, you have to make sure you know what are the latest models coming out and quickly bring them to your platform. Um, that's kind of roughly how we got started.
Amazing. I'd love to dig in. Was it called IMO, or how did you pronounce it?
Yeah, I'm a messenger is
IMO.
the name of the product.
hmm I'm
Um,
curious, what was the experience like there? Because you said 10 years there and crazy growth, getting 200 million monthly users. When did you join? Like, at what stage was the company at? And like, how much has that experience influenced how you're running your company now?
I think I definitely learned almost everything while like doing that, I was I think the seventh person in the company. We had a different product at the time, so that's another thing you kind of learn. Like you do something that I can dive a little bit into it. Like we're doing multi-messenger protocol. So basically we would allow people to log in with their Facebook Messenger and Google Talk account and bring the people into one list. And we also had support for Skype and 10 other messaging networks. And we mostly had a website, but like in 2010 is when mobile phones were kind of coming along, and we quickly focused more on the mobile experience for these apps. But the other thing I realized is like when we first started building the messenger, I kind of felt like, I mean, I myself had accounts with Google, Facebook, Skype, Yahoo, MSN, and I thought, you know, all these people have all these accounts. Why would they want to create another messaging account? But the realization there was that there's actually these billions of people who are going to get their first cell phone in the developing countries that don't actually have a Skype account and so our service at the time requiring this third-party accounts was basically not a good service. And so we ended up doing our own protocol, our own messaging network using a phone login. And to be honest, we kind of ended up having a application quite similar to WhatsApp, but with voice and video calls before they had added theirs. And that's really what led the growth. It was kind of a fun experience as an engineer, kind of in charge of the backend and infrastructure to kind of scale from 0 accounts on our own network to billions of accounts on the network and 200 million monthly active accounts. So I don't know, I had a lot of fun building that, and I mostly actually had fun working with this set of people that were in the company. I think the company was pretty good at hiring top talent, often selecting for people who have participated in programming competitions.
Yeah, I feel like the people really, really make one of the things that I got me interested in going back to the startup world was just like being able to work with a really nimble and small and really capable team that you'd like to work with. Because like when you get to bigger companies, you don't always have as much of a say in who you work with. There's a lot more politics. So definitely hear that. And I'm curious, you mentioned that you guys were ahead on video and some other things versus WhatsApp. And you hear the story a lot where like, great team, great talent, they're ahead on features. What's the difference between like why WhatsApp has its crazy? I mean, even the growth that IMO had is crazy, but WhatsApp's obviously now much bigger. What's the difference? Why do they win in that situation?
I think one thing that they did very well is the groups features in WhatsApp, and that I think led to a lot of growth. And they just generally did messaging well before us. And this kind of social things, they kind of spread and with different geographies. So like WhatsApp is the most popular messaging app, but there's certain countries at which different apps are most popular. And we managed to grab a few countries. For whatever reasons, the WhatsApp team didn't essentially add voice and video calls until later on in their kind of application live, and we added these features early on. And so most of our usage was at voice and video calls. But this also meant that whenever they eventually added these features, it was much harder for us to kind of continue to grow and differentiate. So sometimes
Super
like
interesting.
it's a fun product to work on, and then it gets to a very respectable scale, but it doesn't have a long-term like prospects that are
Mm-hmm.
that great. And partly my effort on like at Deep Infra, I wanted a product that is not like one company takes everything space. I wanted somewhere where um, I still think we could be the leader in the space, but it doesn't have to be that the leader will grab all of the market.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Well, on that note about the market, obviously there's so many AI companies these days, and specifically you guys are focusing on infra. How would you say, do you think about like positioning and brand and things like that of like where do you fit in the market? And yeah, how did you figure those things out?
So here's my line of thinking. I can clearly see that there will be a lot of demand for inference. Models are being trained, then they're being released, and then they need to run somewhere. And 3 years ago, it looked a little different. Like model will get trained for 3 months, then they're gonna get released, and within like a couple weeks, another model gets released, and they get kind of overshadowed, and they don't never end up running really long. And that's normal in that kind of moment where we're like quickly developing, quickly moving, and the adoption is not there yet. But so it made sense to me that if we spend like $1 million training a model, you would essentially want to run the model for maybe 10 million. It, and so I thought there will be definitely a lot of demand down the line for inference. And the other interesting thing is inference is quite hard. Like these models are big, complicated, expensive to run, hard to maintain, and finicky. Because the technology is still so new, they're like not really mature technology. And the other kind of insight I have is the GPUs themselves are quite expensive, right? And so as a startup, what is the alternative, right? Like if you wanted to use an open source model and you try to do it by yourself, you have to like rent, let's say, 4 cards and then try to run the model yourself on them. But that would kind of have a very large fixed cost for these cards, which you will essentially be wasting them while you're kind of still working on the product. You haven't found like the fit. And it really slows you down if you have to run the model yourself. Because if you want to switch to a different model, then you have to figure out how to run that model. And so we just try to make all the open source models more accessible to startups and small businesses that want to build something with them without them having to get their hands really dirty with all the underlying stuff. So we abstract the models to the same API that you would probably use with OpenAI, and we take care of all the background work on how they actually run. The exciting part is I think I don't see a limit to the demand for like AI. We're still in the very early innings that everybody's trying
Definitely.
to build a new product using it. And there's all these kind of cool, interesting tools that are being built that are actually quite helpful.
Totally. I'm curious to understand more. Like you mentioned a little bit about this, but like maybe it's a startup. But what does your sort of ideal customer look like? Who are the customers that are really leveraging deep infra?
So the majority of our customers are startups building kind of AI first products. I feel like it's very disruptive time, and I expect actually a lot of the top, a lot of the existing large kind of use cases to get disrupted by AI first kind of implementations. Um, partly, I think, we're mostly hosting these open source models, and the startups are more flexible and they're willing to try like this latest open models, while like a more traditional enterprises would probably seek like a closed source model from like a large provider. So that's kind of, I think, the our target at the moment is startups.
Great. And how do you find them? How do you reach them? Is it Twitter? Is it like meetups? Is it Hacker News?
I kind of tried to do like a bunch of different things. First, I'm mostly spending my time trying to make sure like we have a good service that if I was trying to build something, I would want to use. So what do you want from like an inference service? I think you want very reasonable costs, because that's kind of a key. Once you're hosting an open source model, the quality of the model is in sense like set by the builders. So I think price and speed are like two key components, and then reliability is probably as important or more than either of these. We try to have a very large selections of models that people can use. So that's what I heard from a customer today, that they want to use 6 models, and we're like the only provider that has all 6 of the models on board.
Nice.
Most of our like customers have been kind of inbound. They find us based on benchmarks that other people do on different inference providers. We're kind of starting some outbound sales motion as well, but I think it's a mix of the two, and I expect both will continue to grow.
Amazing. I want to shift gears a little bit and hear about like how you and your teams use AI tools, whether that's something like Cursor or even more basic like SaaS products. Are you also essentially, dog fooding your own systems? Are you using these for workflows? Yeah, tell me
Yeah,
about that.
that's definitely on top of my mind. Basically, I told my team that times are changing, and so we need to be early adopters of all sorts of products that use AI, including using our own. So we've obviously hosted like the biggest and the best models like DeepSeek R1, and we actually use that a lot in our own use cases, like for coding, for research. We use like coding tools. Obviously, obviously started with Copilot. Some of the members of the team are using Cursor, Devin, but we're like exploring all sorts of different tools. It's not even just on the coding side. Like I recently used like the AI sourcing tool from Gem, and this like I'm really excited. I think like there's all these areas where AI will really kind of improve our lives as a founders and engineers.
Definitely. And you mentioned that you kind of told your teams like, hey, we need to be open to like a mindset shift and trying new products. I'm curious how big the team is and what are the different functions, and is there any difference in how you see them adopting AI, and like is one team way more, you know, open to it and others slower, etc.
We're a very small team, about 15 to 20 people right now. Most of the team is engineers, and a lot of them I've already worked with like over the years at different places. So I think the engineering team is definitely very nimble and open-minded and willing to try new things. Um, I actually encourage them to spend a decent amount of their time to see how we can integrate more AI to improve our speed of building things. So I mostly can talk about the engineering team, but I think, the non-technical folks at the company are also keen on experimenting and trying these new products.
Do the non-technical folks mostly use like ChatGPT, or are they also using like SaaS tools like you mentioned, like Gem and stuff like
Um, they use ChatGPT and similar kind of AI assistants. They also use tools, potentially AI sprinkled like sales tools, AI note takers. Yeah, it's still very early on, but my kind of overall direction to the team is that we have to take advantage of the latest things because it's kind of a loop. The more you use certain technology, the more better you're at what you're building, and so it's a competition we have to be at the forefront.
that? Definitely. Yeah, and I'd imagine that you get to see a lot of different kinds of use cases with your various customers because you're more of a horizontal service. We have a similar situation where, we're not building like one solution for one industry. And so it's really interesting to be able to see like how people in the, pet tech space versus real estate versus somewhere else like leverage AI. I assume you guys also see like a wide variety.
That's true. Um, it's people ask me like what vertical or like we focused on, and the exciting part is I've seen essentially almost from everywhere like uses of AI in various different forms. Obviously, there's a lot of chatbots and social chatbots like role play style use cases, but I've seen a lot of usage in gaming, um, from people building kind of companion bots in games, uh, to just like I guess using the models to kind of generate dialogue in games. I've seen like recruiting tech obviously is a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a cool space that will use AI models. I've seen educational use cases. Um, I've seen obviously there's a lot of call center kind of automation analytics
Yeah.
use cases related to AI. It's even hard to kind of keep tabs of all of them.
Yeah.
One thing is we were very, um, privacy focused, so we don't log any of the input and output tokens that the users use via our models. So I mostly just get to know like what the customer is doing based on their website,
Uh-huh.
and it's never quite clear like which part of it is really powered
Mhm.
by what AI model. But it's very, I think, broad.
Great. No, it makes sense. It's crazy how many different applications there are, and it's exciting that, like you said, we're in the really early stages still. So a lot more to come. And definitely, I agree with you on the like. There's not going to be a shortage of inference demand for a long time. So that's super exciting. On that note, like, what's the big next step for Deep Infra? I know you raised a Series A, right? And what are you guys doing with that money? What's the next big milestone?
So I think one interesting thing about our approach is we want to build this AI inference cloud, and I think to build a good one, it has to be very vertically integrated. So we actually deploy a lot of the capital in buying hardware and renting data center space. So I'm excited about like we have a large cluster of B200 GPUs that are up and running and available for our customers to use, and we see a lot of interest in those. Um, it's kind of a combination of all these things. Like you want to get more hardware, improve the software. We which you run on the hardware, get more customers, and then sell all the compute you have, potentially raise more capital and grow the business this way. Yeah.
Great. Love it. Well, yeah, I really appreciate the time. It's really cool to talk to someone who's actually at that like lower level that's powering all sorts of these like application layer things, which is mostly where we sit today. Um, Great to hear about your journey at your previous company as well. Where can people follow along for Deep Infra and yourself? Are you on Twitter or the website deepinfra.com? Anywhere else?
So to get access to all the AI models we host or the GPU resources, our website is the best place. We're pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn, and check out also our careers page on our website.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Nikola. It's great having you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tower.